Okay. Now, when a new client comes to see you, you know, I mean, RIGAR, RIGAAR, G, goals, right? So goal setting is very much built into the human givens process, isn't it? And it's incredibly useful. But sometimes when a client first comes to see us, they are maybe so overwhelmed with their problems that even the language of goals for them is very hard to get their heads around at the very beginning, right? That it's like, oh my God, you know, he wants me to set a bloody goal for what I'm going to do in the next 2 weeks and I can hardly get out of bed, or, you know, I'm so anxious, or whatever it is like that. And that you may find that clients are more comfortable in the first instance describing what's going on for them in language that's more problem orientated, right? So that's one aspect to it. Having said that, I'm much more of a goals man than a problems man. I'm much happier with the language around goal orientation or expectation, if you like. But nevertheless, you know, it is important to recognize that for sometimes for people, they're more comfortable, and even when you try to get them onto discussing what a goal might be, they come back to what the problem actually is, you know. So again, it's about validation of the client with that. That's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is this, that if you think about reporting on your data, if you think about the collective aggregate, even your own data, like let's say you work for 12 months and you've gathered data on 40 clients or whatever over that time, and you want to write a report about the sort of issues you're dealing with and the chronicity of those issues. Now, but what I mean by that is that if someone's been suffering from depression for 2 to 5 years, it's very different to somebody suffering from depression for the last few weeks because of maybe some reactive thing that's happened in the environment, right? So when you're, for example, trying to aggregate data, let's say from all the human givens practitioners over time, it's really, really helpful to have information about the type of problems clients reported, number one, and the chronicity of those problems, how long those problems have actually been going on for. Now, at the same time, as I say, I'm a goal-orientated person. So I'm much happier to have the focus on, okay, things aren't great at the moment, but here's where we're heading for. This is the sunshine that lies down the road here. So let's work in that direction. And I'm more happy with a goal-orientated language. So, and I'm going to sort of cover these two together because they sort of present in a similar, although opposite way within Pragmatic Tracker. So my language around goals, and I do this at the very first session with a client, right? Because I'll spend time hearing about their problems, difficulties, and all the rest that's going on. But and this might be a lot of words, and you would find your own way of putting this. But I will often say to a client, Mary, should you choose to work with me over the next weeks, what do you think is the very first thing or the very first couple of things that you need to see change taking place on so you know the work we're doing together is helping? It's quite a big sentence, isn't it? But it actually is very useful in the effect it has on people's brains because they have to go on a search. So, Mary, you know, if you choose to come and work with me over the next weeks, what do you think is the first thing or things that you need to see change taking place on so you know the work we're doing together is helping? So Mary has to go on a search internally. What's the first thing? Geez, if only I could sleep. my sleep is shocking. So she says, well, I think the first thing I would notice if this is helping is that I'll start to sleep better. Great. To sleep better. There's our goal, right? Now the next part is scoring this goal, right? If you want to score it. And I would recommend to do that at the beginning. So I then say to Mary, great, Mary, so to sleep better. So Mary, if 0 is the worst that sleep could possibly be for you at the moment and 10 is the best, what number would you give it now? And Mary says, oh God, it's pretty bad. I don't know, 2. Okay, great. So as well as sleep, Mary, is there anything else on that wish list of yours that you'd like to see change taking place on, so the work we're doing together is helping? And she might say, well, if I could just get over my fear of getting on the bus to go into town, whatever it might be. So if I would be able to go into town, So you get the words in Mary's language, right? To be able to go into town on the bus, for example. Mary, not to 10, not unable to do that at all, 10 being fully able to achieve that. What are you scoring now? 3. Great. Is there anything else, etc. Right now, Mary might then arrive at that point and say, well, you know what, if you can help me to do those 2 things, that's going to really make a difference in my life, whatever it might be. Okay, I'm just giving you some made up examples here. And so you capture that there within the session, right? And it may already be the case that you had captured some problems, that you'd written down some stuff, and about how long has that been a problem for you, Matthew?
Would you actually type it into your Pragmatic Tracker there and then? No, just do that.
No. Just have a notebook. To sleep better, 2. To be able to go to town on the bus, 3. Just drop it down there, a little note, okay? I'll show you why shortly. And I might also have written down, on the problem section. I mean, I always say to my clients, I've a head like a sieve. I'm just going to make a few notes. I hope that's okay. And I never had any trouble with that, So the problem might be very anxious in public places, or the problem might be disrupted sleep pattern. How long has that been going on for? 2 years. How long have you not been able to go in public places? 5 years, whatever it might be, right? Jotting those things down. Okay. So you get the idea. You've a way of getting problems and chronicity, and the chronicity of those problems, and then a way of looking for those goals. Now, if a client is very much orientated in the sort of problems direction, you just may not feel comfortable at that first session necessarily of looking for those goals yet. That mightn't come in until session 2 or 3. That you have to be flexible about all of this, But they're just the general ways of going about that information. And what I want to do now is show you how you get that information into Pragmatic Tracker. Is that okay? Right. So, where am I? Right. Close. So share screen. Okay. So 17th of April, 11:05. So Mary has been in with me for her session. Now, there's some steps here. If you think you're going to use problems and goals with a client, or one or other of them, what's important is when you, in the client profile, down here in the client profile, you tick them. Now, it doesn't matter if actually it turns out you don't use either of them, because if you don't create a problem in Pragmatic Tracker or create a goal in Pragmatic Tracker, they can't come out to the client, right? But if you haven't ticked them in profile, you're going to have to remember to tick them later on, right? So my default was always to tick them, okay? So that's in profile. Save. Oops, it's been a while since I've been. Let me just get back in here again. Right. I've just had my session with Mary. She's gone out and I captured these problems. Sorry, I've got to go back. So yeah, I've clicked them in profile, and then I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me do a new session altogether. Now they're ticked in profile. So assessment, just ignore all of this because obviously. So we've got, let's say, the ORS and problems and goals there, and the F5. Create. Okay, I'm just going to quickly fill in the ORS that the client filled in before the session. Right. Now, the client's been in, and I want to go and add my problems and goals, right? So there we are. That's the session that's happened. There's no problems and goals there at the moment. So I'll go to problems, click to add a new problem. Poor sleep. In middle of night and can't get back. Now, whatever you write in here, you have to bear in mind, this is, you are being the client. It's like first person language. It isn't client reported that they're having difficulty, blah, blah, blah. Because whatever you write, should you offer the client a measure to fill in about this, the words are going to be exactly presented to them as they are written in here. So you're writing this as though you are the client. So you're using the client's language. That's very, very important. And date raised 17th of April, please select chronicity. So this is the chronicity bit, right? How long? I've been having trouble with 1 to 5 years. It's an active problem at the moment. Create. Click to add a new problem. Fear of public places. Too frightened to go to town on the bus, and this has also been going on for 1 to 5 years. Create. Right. So we've created some problems. Now, when I return to sessions now, that was on the 17th of April, you'll notice that there's a section here now called problems, right? Now, we didn't do any scoring with the problems. You could have chosen to score them as well if you wanted to. You could say to the client, you know, if 10 is, it's the opposite way around to goal. So a goal is, the worst a goal could be is 0, the best it could be is 10. With a problem, the worst it could be is 10, the best it could be is 0, you know. But you don't have to do that at all. But anyway, they're captured in here. Now, I'm going to go to goals next. And there's no goals created at the moment. We go to add a new goal, to sleep better. To be able to sleep through the night, whatever it is. Add another goal. What did I say? To go to town on the bus. In fact, I would tend to try to keep the labels short. go in public places with an example of e.g. go to town on the bus. Keep the language of the label a bit shorter. Create. Now, when I go back to my session, here it is. Goals are now here as well. Now, what's very important is that the date that you enter goals or problems for a client is the same date as the session that they were raised in, right? Or discussed in. If the date is not the same date, they won't appear. They won't turn up in that session. They have to be on the same date. The reason this is important is because if you're writing notes of, supposing I saw the client today and I don't get to write it up until tomorrow. Tomorrow is a different day. If I go in and create those goals on tomorrow's date, they won't appear in today's date session record. So the dates must match up. Now, in the case of problems, I didn't ask the client for anything about scoring the problems at all. I just captured what the problems were, right? But in the case of goals, I did ask them, if you remember, to sleep better, and Mary said 2. To go in public places, and Mary said 3. So what I have now done, in that very first session, I have in effect built a measure, a goals measure. At the moment, it has 2 items in it, and I have scored that measure. The client has scored that measure. So I've got a starting point score. And that's obviously very valuable, because if it's the very first session, or whenever they raise a particular goal, you want to know where are they at now with that particular goal, right? So now they're captured in there. And if I go to chart, if I go to problems, of course, there's nothing there because I didn't score anything, remember? However, if I go to goals, there's a scoring point, and there's my goals appearing on the chart, okay? Now, I'm going to pause shortly in case you've got questions about this. So now we're going to add the next session. So now a week's gone by, and we're setting up a session for next week, the 24th, and they'll be reminded about them. Now, I know because I didn't do it in profile. Had I done it originally in profile, they would automatically come as ticked. Now, you may not want to ask a client about their goals at every particular session. You might want to have a few sessions go by, first of all, before you check in on when their goals were. You might never want them necessarily to score where they are on their problems, but you can if you want, right? Let's say I'll take both of these now, and let's see what happens. The ORS. Oops, sorry. Now, let me show you what happens. I'm going to do this. We're going to take this here that the client gets, right? So this is now a few days before, a day before their next appointment, right? I'm going to take that on the, like we were talking about, just to show you what it comes out like for the client, right? Your therapist would like you to answer these questions before your next session. Looking back over the last week, so here's the ORS. Now, how close are you to the goals you want to reach? On a scale of 0 to 10, please choose the number that best describes how close you are to reaching your goal today. Remember, a score of 0 means no progress has been made towards the goal. A score of 10 means the goal has been reached fully, and 5 is exactly halfway between the two. Next, to sleep better. It's doing a bit better. Nah, I haven't been able to cope with that yet. Now, if you were allowing them to also give you a report on the problems that you had reported, you could do this. But you may make the decision that I'm going to have charted those problems all right within Pragmatic Tracker, but I'm not actually going to ask the client to score the problems with a score. I'm going to keep it just with goals. But I just want to show you how you can do it both ways, right? So thinking about the problems you have reported to us, please rate how distressing you have found each one to be over the last week. Poor sleep, still somewhat troublesome. Fear of public places, terrible. Whatever it might be, right? So forced out, they come in to see you. I've got to log myself back in here now. Let me just refresh. I think I'll be forced out. Yeah. You can see our security is good. Go back to my client, test case. Now, the client hasn't come in for that session yet, but they've already filled in the measure, right? I'm checking their score on Friday before the session. And I'm curious to know how those goals are doing. We're moving in the right direction. So it's behaving exactly the same as ORS, Core 10, GAT7, whatever. Do you see? You're building a measure that's a goals measure. You can also build a problems measure. I think my intuition would recommend to use the problems feature more as a way of capturing what the client has brought to you, but not actually worrying about the client scoring the problems particularly, because to me, philosophically, it doesn't fit great to actually be inviting the client to focus on those problems in the wording, if you like, with the human givens approach. I think human givens is very much solution focused approach, and you're wanting to think about the destiny. Where are we getting to? It's goals, it's aspirational, about expectations and things improving. But it is very, very valuable, though, in terms of profiling your own work and eventually in the aggregate profiling human givens in general, that you have captured both type of problems and chronicity. I hope that's making some sort of sense. Now, I can look at this chart and I can look at how are we doing. Sure enough, the ORS is improving and the goals are improving as well at the same time. I'm going to stop there because I suspect there may be some questions about this, so I'll just pause. In fact, could you bear with me for 2 seconds while I just top up my water? 2 seconds. Talk amongst yourselves.
You're all on mute other than me.
I have to say that is like advanced PhD level pragmatic trainer use.
I tried using the goals and I couldn't work out how to progress them, and it's obviously because I didn't send them to the client to score them.
Yeah,
so it's now making sense to me what I tried to do.
I've never ticked problems and goals before on the profile, so yeah, absolutely. But it is quite it's quite advanced, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't like the thought of capturing the problems and asking them how distressed they feel about them at all. I was like, oh, I wouldn't use that language.
No, I think the goals is really But does it sound to you like you have to create the problem in order to create the goal, but you don't have to send the problem?
Yeah, you don't have to.
You don't have to. Okay, so but you do have to create the problem in order to.
So you can create the problem in there, but they don't have to score it, so you don't have to send it to them.
You don't have to fill in the problem section at all. You can just fill in the goals.
Just fill in the goals and then kick the goals in the profile, and then that becomes part of it. If
you want to send it to them, then
That's good, isn't it?
I think I've had a couple of dog phobia clients with no other issues, and there's not an appropriate outcome measures to send them. So I asked Bill about this. Have you got anything for phobias?
Yeah.
He sent me the spin, which was to do with social phobia. So it still wasn't relevant. But from now on, I know that the goals or the problems will be brilliant for phobias.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, what a great facility. But quite advanced. Like if you're only just starting out, I'm wondering whether it's something.
Well, I think it's quite nice to have had a few clients to work out how it all works before you add that in. So I think it's good that he's put it on this second session rather than
absolutely.
The first time.
And to be honest with you, I have lots of video material in the help section of Pragmatic Tracker that explains all about this. But this is the first time ever that I've spent so much time articulating about this to anybody. So,
I found it really useful because I'd actually played around with the goals for one of my clients since the last session, but I couldn't work out how to score it at all. I was like, what am I missing? But it's obviously sending it to the client. What would be useful, because I keep a track and I send them notes of how I think they're progressing and what they've said so they can query it if they don't agree and everything, would be if you could score it yourself as well, if you weren't wanting to send it to them. But that almost goes against them giving you the feedback as well.
I mean,
I keep a record of what we're doing and discuss it with them. Whereas actually I need to change that to being keeping a record and asking them to verify that it's correct almost.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, can you imagine how validating this is for the client when they set a goal, their own words, their own language, their own score at the beginning, and by session 3, they're looking at that chart with you and they're thinking, shit, this is great, good.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, of course.
I've got a really stuck OCD client with OCD. Sorry, he's not an OCD client. A client with OCD, and he's massively hand washing at the moment because he's going to catch COVID, and then he's hand sanitizing really excessively. So I could, for example, write that problem in there, but the goal could be, because he wants to wash his hands less. So would you say, so the goal is reduce hand washing, then that's the label, and then the goal would be, I don't know, because that's about it's not, we all need to wash our hands, but he's washing them excessively. So how would you label that? How would you?
You'd ask him because this is his language, right?
I know he wants to wash his hands less, but I don't know.
He wants to wash his hands less.
That's not enough. That's not tangible.
No. So but you'd say, well, what would less be for you?
So instead of 45 minutes at a time, it might be 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when he's reached that goal, he wants to get down to 5 minutes. Okay. Then you rewrite another goal.
Well, I mean, that's a very interesting one. That example there is so specific. I mean, I think you'd probably just go in and edit the goal, in that sense, but yes, you can keep adding goals as many times as you want, So I think my take home about this is that you use the problems in the background, that, you're in your first session with the client, and as other problems are developing, you're noting them, you're finding out about the chronicity, and you're using Pragmatic Tracker, the problems feature, for your own purposes to log that and keep a track of it, right? Yeah. But you're not worrying about scoring them necessarily at all, right? Yeah. But you keep the goal part as the part you do the scoring in,
Yeah. And if you create a goal in one session and then another goal 2 sessions later, and so you're coming back in 4 sessions time, do they see all the goals when you send them?
Great question, Andrea. You've anticipated it. All right, let me show you. Right. Okay. So here are goals. I'm screen shared, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So Mary has now been on session 5 for me, and she's sleeping like a baby. And I don't need to keep asking her about bloody sleep anymore. She's achieved the goal. She's got to 8 or whatever she's happy with, right? But of course, I want to keep it recorded in Pragmatic Tracker that it's there, right? So all I do is I go to the goal.
You take off the active.
And I deactivate it.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is by now she might have 4 other goals that are in there, right?
Yeah.
And
so she'll only see the ones that are marked active.
Exactly. She'll only see the ones. Now, they will all be in there on the chart. You're on the table that drops down. You'll still be able to, and you'll be able to say to Mary, look, Mary, look at not great. Look at that sleep one, but thinking about today's ones. So you keep the focus on where the action is at the moment. Yeah, but that's a great question. And the same applies with problems. You can deactivate them, right? But I think the goals feature, particularly in the human givens approach, is a much more, in terms of scoring, is a much more useful and beneficial feature. And by the way, there's a whole empirical basis for this as well. It's called goal-based outcomes. There's books written about it. Duncan Law and Duncan Law and Mick Cooper wrote a book called Goal-Based Outcomes in Counseling and Psychotherapy. There's a rich body of literature all around this. So there's a strong empirical basis for working in this way, you know. But it is, you know, this would have been overwhelming to hear all about this at the first sort of training session, if you like, you know. And
I had a client just after the first session who wanted to stop smoking.
Yeah.
And we didn't even do a, I can't think of the term now. We just did it through the rest of what we were doing. I didn't do anything specific about the stopping smoking. I was just encouraging her.
Right.
And actually, by the next session, she'd bought herself a vape. And by the session after that, the vape had broken. Session after that, she hadn't thought about it at all for ages, you know, so it just gradually went away. It would have been a really nice thing to see on that.
To see that progress, exactly, yeah. And by the way, this is massively encouraging to you as a practitioner as well, because you know, it's quite a lonely world out there sometimes, you know, and you're working with people who are distressed, and you know, and then some days you have a client and you think, there's a radio in the background or something. You've somebody who comes in and, you know, there's a real struggle. The session's a real struggle, and you feel it hasn't gone very well or anything like that. And it's easy to get your duck knocked off. So it's very helpful if you can pop yourself back into Pragmatic Tracker and think, hang on a minute, that's just one case. That's one session on one case. Look at how we're doing with these other people, you know. So that's very important as well. Whew. So, is it clear? Do you think you know, my lofty aspirations? I had to think. I thought, right, we'll have another breakout group, and you can go off and practice doing this with each other. I mean, it's 12:25, for God's sake, you know. But I think we have covered a lot of material here. I do think you need to go and practice this. Get a test client. Just, you know, while it's fresh in your head, I'll send you the recording, you know, so you can listen to that bit again. And because once you nail it, the thing that people trip up on particularly is the dates, is not choosing it in the profile, making it available to choose. I mean, anything you choose in profile, you can unchoose at any particular session, you know. So let's say you decide, okay, goals is ticked, but I'm not going to ask about it this time because I'm going to do it the next time. You can untick it, and that's fine. But you need to know about the ticks. And the other thing, the really important thing, is the dates. The date that it's entered must be the same date. You can enter it by all means 2 or 3 days later if you haven't got around to writing it up. But you must make sure you edit the date will default to today's date. You've got to overwrite that to the date of the actual session that you're referring to, you know. Otherwise, it won't appear. It will appear, of course, in the next session, you know, if the scores don't go in. But it's always nice if you have captured those scores to get them entered, you know, because that was your starting point, you know, and you'll see more shift obviously take place then, you know.
I can see me using the goals. I like it.
Really, it's really useful. Yeah. And I don't think you squeezed a lot into the first session with us, which was the hour, but you really get to delve deep with the 2 hours because it gives really
deep dive. To be honest, it was much nicer for me, first of all, to allow plenty of time at the beginning to really bottom out, especially for Matthew, you know, to make sure he got to ask all his questions. When I'm kidding. No, you know, to allow people time to make sure you feel you've thrashed everything out and you got clear, and then to have more time to sort of explore this, you know, in more depth, you know. So I think we probably need to wrap it up, guys. Are you happy? Do you feel that you feel you'll be able to get at this all right? You know where I am if you need me. I'm only an email away. I think I would recommend practicing this, you know, make yourself a client of yourself, like I always say, always with anything in Pragmatic Tracker. Oh, before you go, I have to show you something really exciting. Only from yesterday. I'm not sure. Let me get the right screen just before you go. You'll be the very first to see this. This is something I'm very excited about. HCI.
Can I say, while you're doing that, you keep doing that, that whenever I have a problem, I go into Contact and I write the problem to Bill, and I get an answer so quickly, and it's always really straightforward and helpful. So
thank you very much.
What's been really helpful to me.
That's
Do you
great.
do anything else, Bill? Or do you just do this 24 hours a day?
No, I do. Well, I mean, we've got a lot of users. We've got about, I don't know, more than 20 organizations we're working with now, right, all the way from New Zealand to the west coast of America. So we've got people in Singapore, quite a lot of services in the UK, 3 or 4 in America, so there's quite a lot of people to look after.
Well, make some time for yourself sometimes, Bill.
Bill, did you create it?
Sorry?
Did you create it?
Yeah. Well, I didn't do the code, but myself and my colleague Tony Jordan invented it and all of that. And then we have actually the guy is in Sheffield as well, Mike Tier. He built it. He's our developer, if you like, So we've been working with him for the last 10 years, and every new feature that's built, we design it, think about it, trash it all out, what it's going to look like, and then he builds it.
Brilliant.
Right, so let me just show you this. This is what's called a UAT site. So the new thing, you might remember, if some of you might have attended the last February, sessions that I do, of which I'm doing one on Wednesday week and Thursday morning week as well. And we were talking about capturing interventions. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list as yet, but it's a first go at it. And we had a go at building it in what we call subcode fields that we're able to populate when people want to add other stuff on. But then we realized that it was just a bit messy and we wanted to do it in a better way. So since February, so this is an example of development, we've hard coded a whole new section into the session record, so that you can literally go tick, 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 tick. Today I did
much better.
that.
Yeah, I like
That is better. Yeah,
You like that?
that
Great.
first, second, third, I found a bit cumbersome.
Yeah, it is.
Because there was
You didn't know
loads I
you'd
did.
chosen it because it just highlighted it a little bit different color, but you didn't know you'd actually really.
That's
done
right. No, we didn't like that at all. And so when we went back to Mike, our developer, he said, yeah, I think we can do that in a nice way. So now what I haven't yet got to is an exhaustive list of everything, every possible thing a human given therapist could do. So, and I had sent that out as a list. I might send you guys a screenshot of that. If you can think of other stuff, we can add them in, you see. I've got other, but there was nowhere to put the other in. We can put other, and we can put a box down here, but I think that's messy. I prefer to try to, even if it's quite a long list, I'd prefer to try to get it all into the list, if you like, And the idea then is, at a session, as you're writing your notes up, you can go, yeah, I did that, and that, and that. And then you can imagine, let's say we had 200 clients to report on in 2 years' time, where we could do a wonderful bit of study to look at what do human given therapists do with their clients and how are they related to outcomes. Can you imagine it? It would be fantastic to be able to see what was the impact of doing the rewind in session 2, what was the change in score to session 3, etc., etc. You can imagine the scope of it, Yeah. So again, this is very helpful for yourselves, but also this is where it's moving into that bigger picture of like, how am I helping my organization by capturing this type of information? This, like, nobody is doing this, I can tell you, this is groundbreaking stuff. So that's where we want to be, on the wet edge of the paintbrush. Okay, well, look, thank you very, very much. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a great session, and in a way, it was quite nice to just have a small number. Not at all. It's a pleasure.
Brilliant.
I'll send you the link to the recording, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
Bill.
Okay. All the best.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.